how was porn imprinted in your life at that early age?
Yeah, and some of this is where a therapist has also helped me in terms of do a bit of archaeology in terms of my story. But I'm a Canadian farm kid, was the fourth of five kids, born, raised on a big cattle farm. And I was kind of sandwiched between two higher needs kids. My older brother had a lot of emotional challenges. He just really struggled in terms of navigating life emotionally. So he required a lot of effort from my mom. My dad was a workaholic. He was kind of out of the picture. So my mom was kind of the one to raise the kids. So my older brother required a lot of attention. And then my younger sister was born crippled with club feet. So she spent the first couple years um, at Shriners Hospital and trips back and forth with all of that. And so if you can envision that, I was kind of the quiet, forgotten, unseen child that,
Got it.
because I didn't have a lot of overt needs, it was like, well, Vern's good to go. He doesn't need a lot, so we can focus on the more needy kids on either side of him. Well, the message I got for that was I was a bit invisible, unseen. And now at the age I wouldn't have been able to communicate those emotional needs of being seen and being valued and important, until you're older, of course.
Sure.
So what happened in that place, I was a bit of a drifting. And so, somewhere in that 10, 11, 12 age, my neighborhood buddies, there's always, introduced me to one of their older brothers' stack of porn magazines.
Got it.
And I had that Velcro in my life, that whatever half of Velcro it was, whether I was the hooks and it was the fuzzies, or that I was the fuzzies and it was the hooks, it really all of a sudden began to give me, it somehow made me feel warm. It made me feel connected.
Mm.
It dealt that sense of feeling alone and adrift and unseen. All of that went away when I was around porn. So before long, I started to, sometimes I actually would break it, go into my neighbor's house when they were gone. There was a couple single guys there, and they had a stack of porn magazines. I would take one or two. I would be able to find my own. And so um, I would begin to develop my own porn world. Now, I
Mm.
didn't realize at the time, but my parents were in a bit of a drift, a relational drift. And when I turned 16, they split up. So
Wow. Yeah.
they divorced. And so in that process, again, when this is the only life I was like, oh, whatever.
Right.
It didn't, I wouldn't say that it affected me. I didn't break down emotionally, but it just, once again, I felt more isolated, alone, and more attracted to that special secret life, where I felt seen. Again, these are all things as an older person I've started to understand. I wouldn't have been able to talk about this or understand this when I was younger. So that kind of went through now grade 11-ish. So that would be my junior year in high school. That's American speak. We don't speak that way. In my junior year in high school, I had a really significant spiritual awakening at a summer camp. And that began a new porn season of my life. That was the binge and purge porn season. And many of you will identify with that season, because you know what it's like. You throw everything away, right?
Right.
I probably addicted wait to a few postal workers, because I would throw them in post office boxes that you couldn't get back at, right? And um and so but then I would break down, I would go buy a magazine or two and different sort of material. And at some point the conviction would grow and grow, and then I would say that's the last time, and I would take my whole stash and throw it away. Binge and purge kind of
Mm.
thing. So
I remember doing that too. That's very relatable to me.
yeah, and I think many
And
people, will have struggled with that double life, that torn, that cognitive dissonance, right? So that took me through, moving into to college years. It would be very much similar, but of course, now that you're on your own, I would start renting VHS movies. I remember slipping into an adult movie theater in I think I lasted about 15 minutes, and then the conviction overwhelmed me and I fled. You know,
You just full sprint ran like a
exactly,
Dallas Cowboys
uh,
running back,
yes, exactly,
Emmitt Smith.
all of that kind of stuff. But like a lot of guys, so I was in this one step forward, two steps back, three steps forward, this, torn, completely uh spiritually miserable, all of that kind of stuff. And I don't know where all your listeners will be at spiritually, but a lot of guys, either it's a spiritual conviction, or some guys just will say, this is not who I want to be.
Hmm,
It might not be in overt spiritual language, or it may be where they go, I don't like this in my life.
right.
I don't like what it does to me. I don't like the way it invades my life and takes over. So, like a lot of guys, I was going to be, first of all, I was going to be an accountant, and then I went into I got a business degree, but then I met this amazing woman at UBC, University of British Columbia, and I'm going, you know what? She was going to be a teacher. I thought that's kind of cool. I wasn't one of these guys that had a lifelong what I was going to do. I keep unfolding into the next chapter, Mac. I keep saying now I still don't know what I want to do with the rest of my life, but I knew after a while I wasn't going to be an accountant, so maybe I was going to be a teacher.
Okay.
So met this great girl at university, and actually her background was her dad looked at porn all the time, and she found his stash, and so when I told her about this, she didn't freak out.
Okay.
She didn't, could you? This is what's wrong with you. She kind of felt like doesn't every guy struggle with porn?
Hmm,
So that was not a bad first conversation to have her response. Now that's not every person is going to have that response. Not every, and I'll often talk to guys that I'm meeting, tell me what sort of conversations you had if you're married pre-marriage. Some guys didn't have any because they knew this was no go, right? So
right.
I
And then
I yeah,
question for you.
yeah.
Was that was that discussion like did you bring it up, or was it through premarital counseling that like that's where it came up, or how did that kind of conversation come up for you guys?
You know, I tend to be like many podcasters. I tend to be a bit of an oversharer, Mac. We were having this conversation in one of our recent groups,
Right.
and I just didn't want stuff to stay hidden,
Yeah,
right? And
sure.
I think I brought it up. Um, we only had one or two premarital counseling sessions, and the guy was like, "Well, considering couples I see, you guys are good to go." So he didn't, it didn't really come up per se in that way,
Okay.
but I was caught up in this. Okay, because my girlfriend at the time, soon to be fiance, didn't freak out. I'm going to be good to go, especially because we all know that when we get married,
Right.
it's gonna porn struggles we have because we'll have sex on tap, right? They'll right
Right.
pull the lever and we're good to go. And the reality is, like, most guys I talk to, it reemerges within 6 to 9 months
Yeah.
of their lives,
Clockwork.
right? Like clockwork. And you realize, doggone it, this actually isn't about sex. It's about an entirely different way of medicating one's life
Sure.
and running to those that brain buzz whenever we have an uncomfortable feeling
Yeah.
that we've just paired with feel bad, run to porn, feel bad, run to porn, feel stressed, run to porn, feel bored, run to porn. And just getting married didn't actually do anything. So didn't change anything. And so if you're a single guy and you're going, I just got to hold on until I'm married, I hate to tell you that, dude, you've got work to do on the front side of marriage because marriage isn't going to change anything. And that's hard for people because they've been pinning a lot of hopes on that. So
Yeah.
um, so, so we moved to, taught high school for a few years. Then I did something really crazy. That unfolding thing I described where I just did the next thing. moved down. We got involved in a church, and a guy who was a pastor say, Vern, you don't beat your wife. You've got some Bible skills. You've got some marriage skills. I need somebody to come on staff with me. And I couldn't find a teaching job at the time. And
Okay.
I said, fine, I'll come on staff with you to help you out in a pastoral role, you know. And before you know it, I'm in that for 5 years. And then this is one crazy thing after another. Then we decided to move and plant a church
Okay.
down in this where I live right now. And so as a church planter, so you're thinking, okay, well, if you're not in the church world or you're not in, you're thinking, okay, well, obviously doing something where you're a professional Christian, that's obviously going to take care of your porn problem,
Ooh,
right?
okay. Yeah,
Well,
this is the next level of things you think is going to take care of it.
exactly. Oh, dude, that's gonna get it, knock it out of your system completely. Guess
Sure.
what?
Nope.
Nope. And so it did not do that. And all it did is it put me into a bit of a quandary because I had started to develop over a period of time what I call my perfect storm.
Mm,
If you ever have seen the movie with George
hmm.
Clooney, The Perfect Storm, they're out on a fishing boat and three different storm systems converge. And
Right.
and then they never make it back. But for me, the three storm systems were this. Number one, now we're going into the early 2000s now. Number one, I was speaking most every Sunday. I was substitute teaching high school. I was, so I was so busy with so many competing demands. 7 year mark, I burnt out.
Mm,
And I hit depression. I cried more. I ran into complete emotional wall in my
mm,
life, burnout. That's storm one. Storm two was a midlife crisis, turning into my 40s. Realized that at that time, when my dad turned 40, he left my mom, started
mm,
a series of affairs.
mm,
So that was interesting in terms of, and realized later on he had had a sexually compulsive life his whole life that he'd kept hidden. So that was interesting. So storm one was this whole burnout,
right.
having too many competing demands, not just being busy, too many competing demands. Two was the idea of midlife, where I didn't like the way my life was turning out. A lot of the carrots that I'd been chasing, or the rabbits I'd been chasing as a greyhound runner, um, you know, I I hadn't managed to catch them. And then the third one was a very simple one, working alone in an office with the advent of high-speed internet.
Mm,
So all of a sudden, peer-to-peer network, I'm downloading high speed, full-length porn movies. And I mean, that's like the mother load, right?
right, right, right.
That's like, forget the days of Playboy Penthouse. This is high speed, bam, bam, bam. And so I realize I am in serious trouble.
Mm,
Now, my wife is different than most, and she says, no, we're in trouble.
mm,
We need help. I
mm,
will be your partner. You have to take responsibility,
right,
but we need to get help. So we started driving down, and this is the first place of mentorship. I know that's themes we're exploring today. This is the first time that I had somebody who was ahead of me be, with some
right.
knowledge and wisdom speak into my life. And this guy worked primarily with sexual addictions, and he began to fillet my life, so to speak. Say,
Yeah.
well, let's talk about you. I remember one of his very first questions, Mac, was, well, tell me about your mother.
Mm,
And I was like, what do you want to talk about my mother for? Who
right.
wants to talk about their mothers? My mother's great. My mother was, it was this defensive reaction.
Sure.
But now looking back, the absence that my mother was not able to play in my life, in one sense, created a Velcro in my life for something like porn. So that would be my first example of a mentor. So that started the process. Now, I am a really slow learner when it comes to recovery. I am the world's slowest learner. So, so this was going back, and I'm not trying to sound like an old fart here, before there were virtually no recovery resources
Sure. Yeah.
around porn. There was
Right.
AA. In fact, I went to AA for an entire year, Thursday noon hour meetings. Alcohol wasn't my struggle, just to learn about recovery. And I
Wow.
sit in those meetings and listen to guys talk about their struggle with alcohol. And if it ever came to me, I'd just say, I'm Vern, I'm a recovering sinner, or I don't know, they would laugh at me and move on. Because but I just, that was the closest thing I could find to, to a sense of guys with shared brokenness.
Sure.
So at that point, I did something really dumb. Well, not dumb. I started a group for guys. Now, because I'm an oversharer, remember we started with that? Even though I was a pastor in the community, I got to the point where I didn't care anymore. So people started showing up to the group that I was leading to get help.
Wow.
Now,
Yeah.
so I was a very defective mentor, right? And I liken it. Well, I wasn't like I liken it to if you're going to climb Everest, which I don't ever plan on doing, but I do know there's a series of base camps,
Sure.
base camp one, base camp two, whatever they call them, and I would still be struggling and acting out on a semi-regular basis, but I couldn't find anything to get help. So I essentially said, well, I'm going to start something. So I would have like 8, 10, 12 guys. And at one point, and I would share when I was screwing up.
Sure.
And there was a few times where he says, guys, I think I got to stop because I'm not where I need to be. And they were like, dude, you can't stop doing this
Right.
because no matter what, no matter where you are, you're ahead of us.
Sure.
We can't get 3 days or a week. So don't quit. And in fact, your struggles create a safe place for us. So don't so I did that for 10 years. For
Okay.
10 years, I led a recovery group, even though I was not walking what I would say in any kind of real sustained recovery.
Got it.
Now, remember I said I was the slowest guy in recovery?
Yeah.
So now, okay, and you're getting older, Vern. Okay. Now